Sarah, thank you for your time. You're pretty strong on calling out Daniel Andrews about withdrawing from this Belt and Road Initiative. Explain why.
Peter, good evening. Look, the Belt and Road Initiative is a really important part of China's approach to global domination, if I can say that. It is very concerning. It's not in our national interest. The Prime Minister has made it very clear that our economic sovereignty is so important. And Daniel Andrews has already spoken about the opportunity for Chinese companies, particularly as part of the Victorian infrastructure program, to come across to Victoria and to work here. So what we don't even know is what sort of numbers of jobs is that going to mean in terms of lost jobs for Australians and Victorians. So I have called on the Premier to cancel this deal. There has never been a more important time, frankly, to stand up for jobs both here in Victoria and across this nation.
What's interesting too, and I know this for Belt and Road initiatives, a contract signed with other nations around the world, is you're right, Sarah, they do often come with a labour requirement so that labour is sourced from China and other things too. Daniel Andrews, at the moment, Victoria has debt headed to the $70 billion mark. It's extraordinary. $50 billion of that debt has been acquired in the last couple of years. $50 billion hangs around Daniel Andrews' neck. What proportion of this debt do we know is foreign debt in and around this whole Belt and Road Initiative? Do we know that?
Well, that's the problem, Peter. We know very little about this deal. There are actually two agreements, one signed in 2018 and another one signed in October last year. And at the time, the Home Affairs Minister, Peter Dutton, called out the government, saying that this was absolutely not in the national interest. The Australian government has made its position very clear. We won't be signing up to any sort of initiative. And we don't know what this is going to cost Victoria. This has clearly been entered into to bolster the bottom line for the Victorian government. And as you say, there has been a dramatic escalation of the net debt here in Victoria. In fact, the ANZ is saying by mid-2021 it could reach almost $90 billion, about 19% of gross state product, GSP. So really it's quite alarming. But as I say, fundamentally, this is about getting Chinese workers here into Victoria. Now, of course, foreign investment is very important for Australia, but this is really quite separate from any notion of foreign investment. This is about creating a pathway for Chinese workers to come here to Victoria, and we don't know the cost. All we know is the cost is going to be very, very significant.
Yeah, as I said just the other day, $24.5 billion, and they badge it under the brand of coronavirus money. But of course, it's a trouble that the budget got into long before this virus hit. And the 18-19 financial year, they'd also had another $23 billion. What concerns me is there's not much known publicly about the details of this agreement. I've asked Liberal opposition MPs down here in Victoria. So much of it is secret. There isn't the same scrutiny like there is in the Senate, in the federal parliament, about Senate estimates to delve into the detail. It's not even clear, as I said, how much of the debt owed in Victoria is foreign-owned debt. How can this be pursued? Is there any weapons you have at the Commonwealth level to ensure Victorian taxpayers are looked after here?
Well, I'm sure that there will be some opportunities during the Senate estimates process, but obviously, as a Victorian senator, this is critical for Victoria. And I've always been pretty fierce in standing up for my state or the people I represent, including when I was obviously the former member for Corangamite. But Peter, what we don't know, we've heard all these sort of motherhood statements about Silk Road cooperation and this great alliance between China and Victoria, which of course was entered into contrary to the advice that was given by the Australian government. And we don't know what this is going to cost, but all we do know is that this is very much in China's interests. It's a key part of their foreign policy. It's a key part of their economic strategy. And, frankly, it's I would even go as far as to say it's quite dangerous for Victoria This is a deal that does need to be cancelled. And now that we do have this pressure on unemployment, there is never a more important time for Daniel Andrews and Victorians to be focused on jobs for Victorians and Australians.